Hey everyone, welcome back to the Good Girl Box, where we explore how to reclaim your life, set healthy boundaries, and live authentically. I'm Karen, your host, and today we're diving into a topic that's close to my heart: enmeshment in families and relationships. Enmeshment happens when the boundaries between people are blurred, when your identity becomes so intertwined with someone else's that it's hard to know where you end and they begin. This can happen in families, in romantic relationships, and even in friendships. While it can sometimes feel like closeness or love, enmeshment is actually unhealthy because it prevents you from being your own person. So today we're going to talk about why enmeshment is so damaging and how you can begin to untangle yourself from it to live a more authentic and fulfilling life. Let's start with the basics. What is enmeshment? Enmeshment is when boundaries within a relationship are unclear or non-existent. It's when your emotional well-being, your decisions, even your self-worth become so tied to someone else that you lose your sense of independence. In families, enmeshment might look like parents being overly involved in their children's lives, dictating their decisions, and expecting emotional loyalty above all else. In romantic relationships, it can look like partners being overly dependent on each other for emotional validation, needing constant approval, or controlling each other's choices. It can be subtle or extreme, but either way, it leads to a loss of individuality. What's tricky about enmeshment is that it's often mistaken for love. It can feel like closeness, like loyalty, or like we just get each other so well. But in reality, it's about control, lack of boundaries, and emotional dependency. Now let's talk about why enmeshment is so harmful. When you're enmeshed with someone, you can't fully express who you are. You make decisions based on what you think will please others, not based on your own needs and desires. You become a reflection of their expectations, rather than living as your true self. Enmeshment often leads to feelings of guilt and obligation. You might feel like you owe someone your loyalty because you've been taught that love means sacrificing yourself. But love shouldn't cost you your autonomy. When we're enmeshed, it's easy to feel trapped, like you're living someone else's life, following their script instead of writing your own. What makes enmeshment particularly toxic is that it keeps us stuck in unhealthy dynamics. When you're enmeshed with a parent, for example, you might never feel like you can make independent decisions without their approval. In a romantic relationship, you might constantly seek your partner's validation, feeling incomplete or anxious without their input. Over time, this creates a cycle of codependency that's hard to break. The other person often expects you to keep playing your role in the enmeshed dynamic, which can lead to resentment, frustration, and even burnout. So how do you know if you're in an enmeshed relationship? Here are some signs to watch out for. 1. Lack of boundaries. You find it hard to say no to certain people, even when you feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed. They might expect constant emotional support or involvement in your life without respecting your personal space. 2. Guilt or obligation. You feel guilty when you try to assert your independence or make decisions without their input. There's a sense of obligation to keep them happy, often at the cost of your own well-being. 3. Emotional dependency. Your mood or self-worth is overly dependent on how the other person feels. If they're upset, you feel responsible for fixing it. If they're happy, you feel relieved or validated. 4. Fear of conflict. You avoid speaking up about your own needs or desires because you fear upsetting the other person. Conflict is seen as a threat to the relationship, so you suppress your own feelings to keep the peace. 5. Loss of identity. Over time, you start to lose a sense of who you are. Your goals, hobbies, or interests become less important, and you may find yourself asking, "Who am I without this person's influence?" If any of this sounds familiar, don't worry. You can break free from enmeshment and start living a life that feels authentic to you. It takes time and conscious effort, but it's entirely possible. Here's how you can start. 1. Identify and set boundaries. The first step is recognizing where enmeshment is happening and setting boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to step back and take time for yourself. In fact, it's essential. Healthy relationships have clear boundaries, where each person respects the other's space, autonomy, and feelings. Start small by setting limits on how much time or emotional energy you're willing to give. This could mean telling a family member, "I can't discuss this right now," or letting a partner know that you need space to make your own decisions. Boundaries might make others uncomfortable at first, but they are necessary for healthy, balanced relationships. 2. Reclaim your independence. Reconnect with yourself by spending time alone, exploring your own interests, and making decisions based on your desires, not someone else's expectations. What do you want? What lights you up? Start making choices that align with your true self, not the version of you that's trying to keep others happy. 3. Practice self-validation. One of the hardest parts of breaking free from enmeshment is learning to validate yourself. When you've spent years relying on someone else for emotional approval, it can feel scary to stand on your own. But the more you practice self-validation, the more confident you'll become. Instead of seeking approval or reassurance from others, ask yourself, what do I think about this? How do I feel? Trust your own judgment and learn to be okay with your choices, even if others don't agree. 4. Embrace conflict. It's important to recognize that conflict is not the end of a relationship. It's a natural part of healthy communication. When you begin setting boundaries and asserting your independence, there will likely be pushback. People who are used to enmeshment might resist the change, and that's okay. Don't shy away from conflict. Instead, view it as an opportunity to create new dynamics where both people can thrive as individuals. Speak your truth with kindness but firmness, and trust that those who truly care about you will respect your need for autonomy. 5. Seek support. Breaking free from enmeshment isn't easy, and it's okay to seek support along the way. A therapist or coach can help you navigate the process, offering tools and guidance as you reclaim your independence. Surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries and encourage your growth. Once you've begun to untangle yourself from enmeshment, you'll notice how much lighter and freer you feel. You'll be able to make decisions without the constant fear of disappointing others. You'll have relationships based on mutual respect and healthy boundaries, where each person can be their true self. It's a process, and it's not always easy, but it's worth it. You deserve relationships that allow you to be fully you without guilt, obligation, or emotional manipulation. And the good news is, once you learn to set healthy boundaries, you'll naturally attract people who honor and respect those boundaries. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Good Girl Box. If you're struggling with enmeshment or feel like you've lost your sense of self in a relationship, I want you to know that you have the power to change that. Start setting boundaries, practice self-validation, and reclaim your independence. It's time to live for you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes on how to live authentically, set boundaries, and step into your power. Until next time, take care of yourself, honor your truth, and remember, you are worthy of relationships that lift you up, not hold you down.